The Wishing Well by B. Toresen. Chapter 1. Deep in the Woods. The tall, moss-covered trees were still under the pale spring sun. Every so often a faint breath of wind made the treetops rustle slightly, but otherwise there wasn't a sound anywhere. Even the birds, who would normally be chirping happily as they busied themselves building nests up in the branches, were quiet. Something unusual and unexpected had captivated the forest, and nature itself seemed to be holding its breath, as if waiting for something. Suddenly the unnatural silence was broken by the sound of horse hooves and happy girls' voices. What a perfect way to start spring break! It's so beautiful here. Olivia held her pony back while she looked up to the high tree tops and said, "This part of the woods must be really old, don't you think?" Catherine, the leader of the 5 riders, turned to Olivia and smiled and said, "Some of these trees are over 100 years old, probably more. A long time ago there was a farm right over there. Actually, my great-great-grandmother grew up on that farm. That's how I know about it." "Is that the ruins of the house that we see over in the clearing over there?" asked Emily, Olivia's best friend. Olivia looked in the direction Emily was pointing. With some effort, it was possible to make out the contours of what had once been the foundations of a house. A few uneven, moss-covered rocks were all that was left. Imagine growing up here in the woods, so far from other people. Olivia shuddered at the thought of it. She was afraid of the dark, and suddenly imagined a scene of tall, dark trees closing in on the farm in the shadows of the night until they surrounded the house like a tight fence, not letting anyone out. Quickly she shook herself free of such scary thoughts. This thing about the house and the trees was a nightmare she'd been having ever since she was a little girl. It had nothing to do with this house, fortunately. Besides, it wasn't nighttime now. The sun was shining. At least it had been a minute ago. Now the day didn't seem quite as bright anymore. Olivia glanced up at the sky and saw that a big, dark cloud had moved in right in front of the sun. Suddenly, she felt an inexplicable eeriness surround her. She heard the others talking, but their voices seemed so far away. Her eyes were drawn to a point to the left of the overgrown foundation wall. What was that? A sort of foggy haze suddenly clouded her eyes, and Olivia felt as if the ground beneath her and the pony was shaking. For a moment she thought she saw the outline of a woman dressed in black, standing by a well over by the wall. She blinked confusedly, and the illusion disappeared, and so did the foggy haze. Olivia blinked again, grasping the reins a little tighter. Her hands were trembling, and her heart was beating rapidly and painfully against her ribs. What was wrong with her? Was she getting sick or something? She looked around and felt a little calmer. The others were chatting as if nothing had happened, and of course nothing had. It was just she who had... Well, she who had what exactly? Seen things or something? Olivia shook her head, irritated at herself for letting her imagination go wild like that. Of course there was no well there, no woman dressed in black either. Then Catherine's next words sent a chill through her. "According to legend, there was an old well right over there, next to the house." Catherine pointed at the spot where Olivia thought she'd seen the woman in black. She stared at Catherine. Had there really been a well over there? But then... "My grandma told me the story," said Catherine, laughing. "When I was little, I believed it wholeheartedly, and I was sure that someday I'd find the wishing well and have all my wishes come true." Was it really a wishing well? Olivia barely recognized her own voice. It sounded faint and unfamiliar, but Catherine didn't seem to notice. "That's right," she smiled. "Would you like to hear the story?" "Oh, yes, of course we would," the 4 girls said excitedly. Only Olivia was quiet. She couldn't say a word, even though she was dying to hear more about this mysterious wishing well. She didn't understand why it was so important to her to find out more about it, but it was. That's all she knew. "Let's tie the horses to these trees and sit down by the wall over there," said Catherine. "This is a good time for a break anyway. Bring your lunch bags, and then we can eat while I tell you the story." Olivia slid down from her pony. It wasn't far to slide. Badger didn't rise up all that high above the ground. When she was out riding with the others, who had real horses, Olivia often felt like a little kid out with the big people. They could sit at the same level and talk to each other, where she was always looking straight at a bunch of horses' behinds. Oh well, maybe she was exaggerating just a little, but that's how it felt. Olivia thought back to the day she got Badger, her very own pony, and how happy she'd been. But now she was 13 and much taller than she'd been 3 years ago. Olivia had thought Badger was the best in the world, but now... Olivia swallowed as she looked at Emily. Her friend was busy tethering her horse to one of the low branches. Emily's horse was named Velvet Dancer and was a gorgeous bay Shagya Arabian horse with a golden reddish mane and tail. Olivia could feel the jealousy well up inside her like a poisonous gas. She knew it was wrong, but she couldn't help comparing this beautiful, elegant animal to her own pony. She gave Badger a disapproving look. His legs were short and stout, and his head shaggy and big with a short, wide neck. Badger was brown, but not a beautiful reddish brown like Velvet. His coloring resembled more that of mud. Badger gave a low snort and turned his head as if he wondered what she was doing. Olivia felt a pang of guilt. Badger had been the world's best four-legged friend for 3 years. He was reliable, steady, and dead boring. There was that negativity again. Olivia tried to shake it off. There was nothing she could do about it anyway. All her attempts at convincing her parents to buy her a new horse had resulted in nothing but long lectures about the expenses of a horse and basically that there was no way it would happen. Wasn't Olivia aware of how much it had cost them to renovate the house and that they really had to watch their spending right now and blah, blah, blah? Yes, of course, she knew all that. But couldn't she at least keep wishing? Olivia sighed as she tied Badger to the lowest branch she could find. He looked like a little toy horse among the bigger, real horses, she thought with dismay. Then she turned her back to Badger and walked over to join the others. "You sure took long enough," said Emily teasingly. "Big horse, short time. Short horse, long time. Is that how it works?" "Funny." Olivia tried to take the joke in good spirits, because she knew Emily didn't mean any harm. Emily didn't have a clue about the jealousy burning inside Olivia every time she saw her best friend swing herself into the saddle of the world's most beautiful horse. Think how wonderful it would be if there actually were a wishing well, thought Olivia as she sat down with the others. I know exactly what I'd wish for. For a moment, Olivia thought she felt the ground vibrate again, and she felt a little scared. What was it? An earthquake? Then the vibration went away. Olivia shrugged her shoulders and leaned back against the old stone wall. She was anxious to hear Catherine's story. Chapter 2. The Old Well. "This is the story my grandmother told me," began Catherine. "It's not much of a story, really, because we don't know the history of when the well was dug or why it became known as a wishing well." "Never mind that, just tell me how to find the well." Olivia started. For a moment she thought she'd spoken the words out loud, but nobody reacted, so she must have just thought them. What was going on with her today? Why was she so bewitched by the idea of the wishing well? After all, it was only an old legend, and the thing she'd imagined seeing a little while ago was exactly that, her imagination. She took a deep breath and forced herself to sit still. Catherine would get to the point soon enough. There was no need to rush her. "According to the legend, the wishing well appears every 50 years, Catherine continued, and then it stays visible only for a few days. The one who finds the well can take a stone from it and get 3 wishes. Catherine shrugged her shoulders. Now that I'm grown up, I don't believe there is such a thing as a real wishing well, of course. But like I said before, as a little girl, I believed it wholeheartedly, maybe because my grandmother seemed so sure of its existence. She warned me about the well. Catherine fell silent and had a distant expression in her eyes, as if she saw something the others couldn't see. Maybe she pictured her grandmother talking to her about the well, thought Olivia, opening her mouth to ask her something. But Emily beat her to it. Your grandmother warned you about the well? Why? Catherine shrugged her shoulders again and gave a crooked smile. Apparently there were certain problems connected with the wishes, not for those who wished them, but for others. Huh? Emily looked at her, puzzled. According to my grandmother, there was some kind of inscription on the well, an old copper plate with the words, "Beware of your wishes. Your elation will be another's tribulation." Tribulation? What's that? Olivia heard her own voice, like it was muffled through a thick layer of cotton. Her whole body was trembling, and she felt warm and cold all at once. What was the matter with her? Was she getting the flu? She had to strain herself to hear what Catherine was saying, but her inner eye was seeing a well appear out of nothing. It was lopsided and overgrown with moss. 2 poles with a crossbar protruded out of the well. That's where they lower the bucket when they want water, thought Olivia in a daze. A small wooden lean-to roof shielded the water in the well from dirt and debris falling from the trees. And there, attached to the lean-to roof, was a metal plate with faded, almost invisible letters. Olivia was jerked back to reality when Catherine's voice reached her. Olivia, what is it? Do you feel sick? You don't look so good. Olivia, answer me. Olivia shook her head, confused. I think I'm getting the flu or something. My head feels kind of funny and dizzy. Well, we better be going back then, Catherine said, and got up and stretched her arm out for Olivia. Olivia took her hand and stood up. Her feet felt strangely numb, and for a moment she thought she might faint. But then her brain cleared, and she felt perfectly normal again. I feel better now, she said, smiling at Catherine. I think I must have fallen asleep there for a moment. The last thing I remember is that I asked you what tribulation is, but I didn't hear your answer. Catherine looked searchingly at her, and then she apparently decided that Olivia really was feeling better. Her face relaxed into a relieved smile, and she said, Tribulation is an old word for distress or suffering. But how could one person's wishes coming true lead to suffering for someone else? Asked Emily, while Olivia struggled to loosen the knots on Badger's tether. It didn't make it any easier that Badger was nodding his head forcefully, obviously anxious to be freed from the tree. Her fingers felt numb and strange, and she had problems getting them to do what she wanted. Eventually the knots loosened, and she listened intently to what Catherine was saying. I don't really know. Grandma wouldn't give me any details, Catherine said, and now she wasn't smiling anymore. All I know is that something happened on this farm when my great-great-grandmother was a young girl. Something that eventually made them all move out of here. My grandmother said the tragedy happened because somebody's wish in the wishing well backfired in some way. Supposedly it backfired at my great-great-grandmother's brothers, but I don't really know what actually happened to them. Ooh, it must have been something awful, Emily shuddered. Maybe they fell into the well and drowned. I have no idea, Catherine shook her head. Let's not speculate about it anymore. In my opinion, this whole thing about the wishing well leading to misfortune is just old superstition. What happened at that time, whatever it was, probably had a perfectly natural cause. But hey, let's forget about this old story and concentrate on the horses now, okay? Olivia really did try to think about something else. Her hands felt steadier now, and she gathered up the reins and swung herself into Badger's saddle. Could someone give me a push? She heard Emily ask behind her. Velvet's so tall, I have problems getting up. Olivia clenched her teeth as she felt the all-too-familiar pang of jealousy. She, in contrast, barely even had to take off with a jump in order to get up on her horse. Olivia looked down at her feet. She felt as if they were embarrassingly close to the ground. No one else had a pony as small as hers. It wasn't fair. Why did her parents have to be so stingy? They could afford a horse if they wanted to. If they really were as broke as they said, then why had they promised her younger brother a $300 remote control car? Okay, so it was for his birthday. Olivia was aware of that. Her brother Brandon was turning 10 tomorrow, and she'd gotten Badger for her 10th birthday, so she really didn't have anything to complain about. Besides, a real horse would cost a lot more than $300. But even so, it was totally unfair. Olivia rode behind the others out of the old farmyard. She wiped away a few treacherous tears that had welled up in her eyes. Frustrated, she turned her head, afraid that Emily, who was right in front of her, would see and ask what was the matter. The old farm was almost out of sight. Only Olivia, as the last rider in the line, could still see part of the farmyard. And what she saw gave her such a start that she almost fell out of the saddle. Instantly, she pulled Badger back. Could it be? I forgot my riding gloves over by the wall, she yelled to the others. Just go on ahead. I'll catch up with you in a minute. Without waiting for an answer, she turned Badger around and directed him back to the farmyard. Her heart was beating very hard, and she felt completely spellbound. When they'd almost reached the farmyard, Badger came to a sudden stop and refused to go another step. "What's the matter with you?" Olivia tried to get him going again, but Badger wouldn't budge. His ears pointed straight back, and he rolled his eyes until the whites shone. Olivia gave up on him and jumped down. Badger could just stand there if he insisted. Olivia threw the reins across his back, hoping he would stay put. A quick glance toward the woods told her the others were out of sight. Then she ran as fast as she could toward the farmyard. What if she was too late? What if it was gone? But the wishing well was there, and it looked exactly as she had pictured it. On shaky legs, Olivia walked over to the well and reached out her hand. She half expected it to be just an illusion that would dissolve and disappear when she tried to touch it. But her hand met solid rock. And there, on the edge of the well, was a round little stone that looked as if it was just waiting for her. Her hand shook uncontrollably as she took the stone and closed her fingers around it. Should she throw the stone in like she'd seen people do at other so-called wishing wells? No. Catherine had said that whoever found the well could pick up a stone and take it with them, and then get to make 3 wishes. As if in a dream, Olivia heard Badger give a loud, long neigh. She must hurry. If the others heard him, they might come back and check what was going on. And Olivia didn't want to share the wishing well with anybody. What if they all picked up a stone from the well? Then maybe one of them would get the 3 wishes, and not her. No, she couldn't let that happen. Quickly, Olivia put the stone in her pocket and turned to run back to Badger. As she did, she saw a movement out of the corner of her eye that made her stiffen. Hesitantly, she turned her head. For a moment, the woman in the black dress was plainly visible, and Olivia heard a distant, muffled voice saying, "Beware what you wish for, dear. You might come to regret it. The misfortune becomes greater with every wish, and only the well can change." The voice also said something about time being short, but Olivia didn't catch all of it. She rushed back to Badger as fast as her legs could carry her, more frightened than she'd ever been before in her life. At any moment she expected to feel a pair of cold, clammy hands grabbing her and pulling her away. She virtually threw herself into the saddle, startling Badger, and rode away as fast as she could. Not once did she look back. She was way too afraid of what she might see. Chapter 3. The First Wish. Later that evening, Olivia sat on the bed in her room. She held the stone she'd found by the wishing well in her tightly closed hands. It had been hard to wait until now, but Olivia wanted to make sure that what she wished for was just right before doing anything. The words spoken by the woman in the black dress had really spooked her. She had to make sure she wished in a way that wouldn't create problems for anyone else. And now, finally, she was quite sure she'd found a safe wish. She closed her eyes and squeezed the stone hard. I wish that my parents would change their minds and say that I can have a new horse. As Olivia said the words, she felt a vibration in the stone. Nothing else happened. Olivia glanced at the door. She'd kind of expected that her parents might come rushing in to tell her the good news, but no one came. Olivia shrugged her shoulders and sighed. Maybe the stone didn't work after all. She crawled under the blankets, turned out the light, and slid into a dreamland where she rode a gorgeous black Arabian horse across open, green fields. The dream would have been perfect had it not been for Badger standing nearby on a tether, neighing sadly after them. The next morning, Brandon was up early, so full of anticipation it practically vibrated through the house. Why does he have to make so much noise, thought Olivia grumpily, pulling her pillow over her head to shut out the sound. Then she felt badly about it. Why shouldn't Brandon be happy? Pretty soon he'd have his dream car. But when Olivia came down to the kitchen an hour later, there was no remote control car. Instead, she met an angry, teary-eyed Brandon who repeated over and over again, "It's not fair! You promised!" "Oh, come on, Brandon. We never promised you a remote control car. I don't understand where you got that idea." Their father shook his head and gave Olivia a crooked, resigned smile. "I'm sorry. This isn't turning out to be a very good birthday, is it?" he said. "We thought Brandon would be so happy with a nice soccer ball, but obviously he had completely different expectations." Olivia stared at her dad in disbelief. Was he joking? If so, it wasn't a very good joke. Poor Brandon. Olivia opened her mouth to say something, but her mom spoke first. "Honestly, Brandon," she said, "you knew perfectly well that we couldn't afford an expensive gift for you this year, now that Olivia will be getting her own horse. We've talked about this. At least I think we did." Her mom felt silent for a moment, looking a little confused, but then she continued. "A horse like the one Olivia wants costs at least $3,000. Dad and I have promised to pay half, and then we can't very well spend money on an expensive car as well. I'm sure you understand that. Maybe next year." Their mom's voice was drowned out by Brandon pushing his chair aside with such force that it fell over. He rushed toward the door, shouting, "This is so unfair! I hate you!" The next moment he was gone. They could hear his footsteps thundering up the stairs. Olivia looked at her parents as if she'd never seen them before. What in the world was going on here? It seemed as if they fully believed that they'd agreed to Olivia getting a horse. Not only that, but she was getting money for it, too. But they'd never promised her anything of the sort. So how? Why? Then, suddenly, Olivia knew what had happened. This was her wish coming true. Olivia felt delirious with joy. Next, she felt a pang of guilt. Poor Brandon. So it was true what they said about the wishing well. Olivia's happiness meant sadness for someone else. Was that fair? Olivia thought about her baby brother's teary-eyed face. She should tell her parents, tell them the truth, because they obviously didn't remember what they had promised Brandon. Olivia's mouth opened and closed again. Wait. Was it really such a big deal whether or not Brandon got that car right now? Naturally, he was disappointed and sad, but he'd get over it. After all, next year wasn't that far away, or Christmas. Maybe their parents would give him the car for Christmas instead. Yes, she was sure they would, once they got to think it over. Olivia pushed her guilty conscience to a place further back in her mind, while beaming at her parents. This was the most fantastic thing that had ever happened to her, and it was all thanks to the wishing well. Chapter 4. The Second Wish. Her happiness lasted a couple of hours, until the inescapable truth occurred to Olivia. It happened while she was standing beside Badger's stall, brushing his shaggy coat. She'd been so happy about her parents agreeing to get her a horse that she hadn't thought logically through the whole thing. The reality of it was finally starting to dawn on her. What did it matter if her parents said yes and were willing to pay half the price of the horse? She would still have to come up with the other half by herself. Olivia made a quick calculation in her head. She had almost $1,000 in the bank. That meant she was at least $500 short. And what if the horse she wanted cost more than $3,000? That could easily happen. It'll take me forever to save up that much. Badger neighed and stretched his head to reach the last of the hay, not a bit interested in Olivia's problems. "Typical of you to only think about food," murmured Olivia as she gathered up the grooming tools. "I'm sure you won't miss me at all when I get a new horse, will you?" she said, opening the door to the stall. "Why should Badger miss you? Are you going somewhere?" Olivia jumped. She hadn't heard Emily come. Her friend suddenly stood there right behind her with a questioning look on her face. No, I was only..." Olivia didn't know what to say. Should she tell Emily what her parents had promised her? Maybe she ought to wait until she'd figured out how to get the rest of the money. Suddenly Olivia started laughing. "I'm so stupid. Getting the rest of the money wouldn't be a problem at all. She still had the wishing stone." Before having thought it through, she blurted out the news. "My mom and dad have finally said I can have a new horse, and they've promised to pay half." Emily gaped at her in surprise. "Wow," she said, "that's fantastic. What did you do to change their minds? Bewitch them or something?" "Something like that," chuckled Olivia. "But what about Badger?" Emily nodded toward the stall. He'd finished eating and was standing with his head pressed against the bars in the stall, looking at the two girls with a longing expression in his big dark eyes. Poor little Badger. It wasn't his fault he was so small and shaggy and as far from the kind of horse Olivia dreamed of as he could be. Olivia pedaled her bike like crazy to get home as fast as possible. At home was the wishing stone, waiting for her. It was lying furthest in the back of her bedside table drawer, and it was as if it were calling to her. "Come, come, I'll grant you all of your wishes." The house was quiet and empty. Her parents were at work, and Brandon had evidently gotten over his initial disappointment and had gone out. Great. Then she could take out the stone and make her wish in peace and quiet. Later that afternoon there was going to be a birthday party for Brandon, with 12 of his friends coming. Peace and quiet would be the last thing she'd have tonight. Olivia ran upstairs and into her room. Her heart beat hard inside her, from anticipation and fear. What was she afraid of? That something unpleasant would happen if she used the stone again? She hesitated, her hand halfway into the drawer. What if her wish made someone else unhappy? She remembered Brandon's teary-eyed face, but then she shrugged her shoulders. Right now, he was probably playing soccer with his buddies and had forgotten all about the car. If nothing worse than this happened, it couldn't be all that risky to use the stone one more time. Besides, Olivia suddenly had a wonderful idea. If she just wished for enough money, she could buy both the horse and a car for her brother. What a super idea! Olivia didn't hesitate another second. For a moment she felt an urge to put the stone back in the drawer, but the thought of all the money made her change her mind. Olivia closed her eyes and squeezed the stone hard. I wish I had $1,500, she said, and immediately felt the stone pulsing inside her hand. Then it was over. The stone was just a regular stone again, and it no longer felt warm either. Quite on the contrary, it felt almost unpleasantly cold against the palm of her hand. Quickly, Olivia put it back into the drawer, while a mixed feeling of anticipation and dread washed over her. Olivia didn't have to wait long for the answer. When she came down for breakfast the next morning, still a little tired after all the noise Brandon and his friends had made the night before, her mother was just hanging up the phone with a confused look on her face. "Hi," she said. I just got a message that you're the recipient of a grant you'd applied for." "What grant?" Olivia stared at her mom, confused. "A horseback riding grant in the amount of $1,500. I didn't know anything about you applying for a grant, so I felt rather stupid when I didn't have a clue what the man was talking about." Her mom's voice had an accusing undertone. "Oh, I'm really sorry I didn't tell you." Olivia heard her own voice as if it came from far away. I kind of applied just for the fun of it, because I never thought for a second I had a chance of getting it," she lied, as her mind was exploding with sheer delight that her wish had worked. "It worked," it sang through her head. Olivia's feet felt as if they were barely touching the ground when she left the stable a few hours later. All doubt was gone with the wind. Now she was just utterly happy and excited. Emily was delighted on her behalf when Olivia told her the good news. But why didn't you tell me that you'd applied for a grant?" she asked, a little miffed that her friend had kept something like this to herself. Olivia had already planned what to say, so the lie came easily and without strain. "I felt so stupid applying in the first place," she said, shrugging her shoulders. "So I didn't want to say anything. I didn't think for a moment that I would actually get it. This came as a complete surprise, I can tell you." Emily's misgivings lessened, and the two girls started talking excitedly about where and when they'd start looking for Olivia's dream horse. "Maybe you should put an ad in the paper," suggested Emily. "You could write a brief description of what kind of horse you're looking for and see what comes out of it." Olivia thought that sounded like a good idea. While she absent-mindedly brushed Badger and gave him hay and a couple of carrots, she thought about what to put in the ad. Now she was on her way home to type up the words she had planned and send an email to the paper. This would really be exciting. Her anticipation was so intense that her stomach hurt. But when Olivia got home, she quickly forgot all about the ad. The first thing she reacted to was that her parents were home. Why weren't they at work? Their vacation wasn't supposed to start until a few days from now. Olivia noticed a growing unease as she put her bike away and hurried inside. "Oh, I'm so glad you came," said her mom. Olivia was shocked to see that her mom's eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. What could have happened? Is something wrong?" Olivia looked at her mom. "Has something happened to Brandon?" Her mom shook her head, and Olivia felt a great relief. Even though her baby brother could be a real nuisance sometimes, Olivia still loved him and didn't want anything bad to happen to him. But what her mom said next completely destroyed Olivia's feeling of relief. It's Grandma. She was attacked and mugged after leaving the bank today. Now she's in the hospital, in the intensive care unit. Your dad and I are going there right now. Brandon is with some friends, and we haven't been able to reach him. I need you to stay home and be here when he comes home, okay? We'll call you as soon as we know anything." Olivia nodded. She felt so numb she couldn't speak or think. But as they were leaving, her dad uttered some words that sent an icy chill down her spine. To think she could be so careless, to withdraw $1,500 and walk around with the money in her purse, even though she knew there have been several muggings and assaults in the area lately. What in the world was she thinking? Chapter 5. Olivia's Dream Horse. Olivia didn't know how long she'd been sitting in the hall. Her legs had simply gone limp, and she sank to the floor completely shocked and bewildered by her dad's words. $1,500. $1,500! The words spun around and around in her head over and over again until she felt so nauseous and dizzy she was sure she was going to be sick. "It can't be true," she mumbled, starting to cry. "It's got to be a coincidence. This can't be my fault." But deep down inside, she knew perfectly well it was her fault. She had received $1,500, and her grandmother had been robbed of the exact same amount. It couldn't be a coincidence. "Your elation will be another's tribulation." The words had come true in a terrible way. Olivia got to her feet and walked unsteadily into the living room. She pulled off her coat and sank into a chair. There she remained, staring into the air without seeing anything at all, and unable to move. The hours until her parents called seemed as long as years, but eventually the phone rang and Olivia lunged to pick it up. Brandon sat in his room, playing a computer game. He didn't seem the slightest bit upset about their grandmother being in the hospital. "She'll get well, I'm sure," he said, and ate 2 big sandwiches without any further worry. Olivia felt like strangling him, but took hold of herself. It wasn't Brandon's fault that Grandma was in the hospital, and hopefully he was right, and Grandma would be well again. "Mommy, I thought you'd never call. How's she doing?" Olivia's hand squeezed the receiver as she waited for the answer. "She's still unconscious." Her mom's voice sounded stifled, as if she was trying not to cry. "She hit her head against some concrete stairs when she fell and fractured her skull. We don't know yet how this will end, darling, but we're still hoping for the best. Dad's coming home now. I'll stay here tonight, just in case." Her mom fell silent, and Olivia could hear a muffled gasp at the other end. After she hung up, Olivia felt so bad that she had to lie down on the couch. The feeling of nausea overwhelmed her, and everything went black. How could this be happening? Why hadn't she listened to the warnings and not made the wishes? But could she wish Grandma well again, maybe? She still had one more wish left, after all. Yes, that's what she'd do. Olivia was just walking into the hall when she heard the door open and her dad came in. "Hi," he said. "Good news." Just as I was about to leave, Grandma woke up for a brief moment. The doctors said that it's a good sign. They seem more optimistic now. Olivia was overcome with relief. But still, the doctors couldn't be completely sure, could they? She'd better make that wish, just to be on the safe side. But what if this one backfires at someone too, she thought in despair. I must think it through very carefully before I do anything at all this time. The sound of her dad's voice interrupted her thoughts. "By the way, I bought a newspaper at the hospital," he said. "It had an extra insert about horses for sale. I decided to take it with me. Now that you've got all the money you need to buy a horse, I thought you might want to look and see if there's anything there of interest. Your grant money has already arrived. I forgot to mention it with all that was happening." Olivia knew he only meant to cheer her up, but his words made her feel sick to her stomach again. What good was the money when it was the reason her grandmother was in the hospital in a serious condition? Of course, she couldn't say this to her dad because he would think she'd gone mad. Olivia took the insert and went up to her room. She sank down on the bed and started browsing through it without much attention. It felt totally wrong to be looking for her dream horse after the horrible thing that had happened. She turned the last page and was about to throw the magazine aside when she almost stopped breathing. There he was, the perfect horse. Her heart beat faster while she inspected the picture of a beautiful white Arabian gelding. He wasn't pure Arabian, it said, but that didn't matter to her. If he had been, she probably couldn't have afforded him anyway. This one could be hers for $2,800. His name was as beautiful as the rest of him. White Starlight. Olivia couldn't stop looking at the picture. She forgot everything around her, totally absorbed by the wonderful daydream in which she was riding Starlight. Everybody's eyes followed her with admiration and envy because of her fantastic horse. And this time she didn't have to use the wishing stone. She already had enough money to buy the horse. Besides, she was going to use the stone to wish Grandma well again, right? She might as well go ahead and do it right away. Olivia got the stone out and held it in her hand. It felt cool to the touch today, just like any normal stone. But Olivia knew better. She sat there with the stone in her hand and a dreamlike smile on her lips. There was no hurry. She could take her time. She had to make sure she'd made the right wish for her grandma. But she wanted to dream a little about White Starlight first, just for a little while. Chapter 6. The Third Wish. Olivia came to with a jerk. How long had she been sitting there with the stone in her hand, daydreaming about Starlight? It felt like 5 minutes, but when she looked at her watch, she realized that a whole hour had passed. Olivia shook her head confusedly. Had she fallen asleep? But if she had, then why did she feel so tired now? She gave a long yawn. Maybe she ought to go to bed. But she wanted to take one more quick look at Starlight first. Then she would finally decide how she would wish Grandma well again without hurting someone else. Olivia smiled at the picture of the elegant white horse. His mane looked as soft as silk. That would be different from combing the bristly mane of Badger's, that was for sure. Poor Badger. There was that pang of guilt again. But she would find him a good home, so everything would turn out all right in the end, and then Starlight would move into his stall and... Oh, no! Olivia realized with a jerk how impossible that particular thing was. Why hadn't she thought about it before? Neither she nor Emily had thought about where to keep Olivia's new horse. But one thing was certain. Badger's stall was definitely not an option. Olivia pictured the tiny stall furthest back in the stable. It was barely big enough for Badger, and the slanted ceiling made it impossible for a taller horse to stand upright in there without hitting his head on it. Help! Where will I keep my horse? Olivia looked around in panic, as if she expected a big suitable stall to appear in her room. How stupid can I get? There isn't a single free stall suitable for this horse in the entire stable. But she had to have a place for her horse. Without thinking, Olivia squeezed the wishing stone while saying, "I wish I had a nice stall for my horse." Not until the stone vibrated in her hand, turning so hot she almost burnt herself, did Olivia realize what she'd done. She had used her last wish, the wish that was supposed to be for Grandma, to make her well again. What's wrong with me? How could I have been so selfish? What if Grandma dies? I'll never be able to forgive myself, cried Olivia into her pillow. It was a restless sleep, with all kinds of confusing dreams about women in black and a horse who neighed in panic and pain. Olivia knew she had to do something to save the horse. But what? And where was it? No matter how hard she looked, she couldn't find it. But she had to. She had to. Its resounding, agonizing neighs were heart-wrenching. Olivia woke up, bathed in sweat the next morning. What a horrible nightmare. But the next moment she forgot all about the dream as she began worrying about her grandmother again. She threw on some clothes in a hurry and rushed downstairs, where she found her father having a cup of coffee in the kitchen. "How is she?" asked Olivia, almost too afraid to ask. Is she... Her dad smiled. "Relax, sweetheart," he said. "Grandma's out of danger." Olivia sank onto a chair with a sigh of relief. Grandma was going to be okay. As she walked to the stable an hour later, however, she knew that it wasn't going to be that simple. Her dad had said that even though Grandma was out of danger, she still had brain damage. They didn't know if she would ever walk again. Olivia's guilty conscience felt like a heavy lump in her chest. Why hadn't she used the wishing stone to wish Grandma well again? Now it was too late. Her healthy and athletic grandmother, who used to go cross-country skiing for miles in the winter, and who could beat Olivia going uphill on her bike without a problem. Was she never going to be able to even walk again? "It's my fault," moaned Olivia while holding her stomach. "Poor Grandma. Oh, how I wish I'd never heard about that stupid wishing well." Olivia suddenly felt fearful, thinking about her last wish. If such terrible things could happen to her grandmother just because she'd wished for money, then what would happen now that Olivia had wished for a stall? What if something happened to one of the horses? What if... Oh, it's silly, she tried to convince herself. Why should anything happen? Probably the worst thing that might happen is that the riding school sells one of their horses, and that wouldn't be such a big problem. But she was far from convinced. Her heart was beating hard and fast when she turned into the stable yard. There was a car there. Was the blacksmith here early? Olivia knew he was supposed to come today to shoe some of the horses, but he didn't usually come until the afternoon. As Olivia got closer to the car, she saw that she was wrong. This wasn't the blacksmith's car. It was the vet. What was she doing here? Something must have happened. Olivia rushed to the door, but before she could open it, it was flung open from the inside. Emily came out practically staggering. Her face was white as snow, and tears were streaming down it. Olivia took a few steps backward from shock. "Emily," she said, "what's wrong?" Emily stopped and looked at Olivia with red, teary eyes. "It's Velvet Dancer," she sobbed. He got intestinal torsion last night. The vet did everything she could to save him, but it didn't work. He's dead. Velvet is dead." Emily threw her arms around Olivia's neck and cried so hard her whole body shook. Olivia was unable to move as she held her friend. She felt completely numb and detached. "This simply cannot be true," was the thought that went through her head over and over again. "It just can't be happening. It can't. It mustn't." But it was. This was no dream, and Olivia knew it all too well. It was reality, a brutal, horrible reality. And she couldn't even pretend not to know that this was the result of her wish. She had wished for a stall. Therefore, a horse had to go. And now it was gone. Dead. The beautiful, elegant, and friendly Velvet. He was dead because of Olivia's selfish wish. Emily pulled away from Olivia. I can't stand to lose Velvet," she cried. "It's too horrible. I don't ever want to have to go through this again. Never. I'll never go to the stable anymore. I'll never, ever have another horse." Emily turned abruptly and bolted down the road. Olivia looked after her. She wanted to shout something, but couldn't get a word out. And what was there to say? "It's my fault your horse died?" Her numb, unsteady legs felt as if they didn't belong to her as she walked stiffly back to her bike. She wanted to go home. She couldn't bear to go into the stable now. The mere thought of it made her nauseous. But Badger was waiting for his breakfast. Olivia stopped with one hand on the handlebars, unsure what to do. She couldn't just let that poor pony go hungry. That wasn't his fault. Before she finished the thought, Catherine showed up, and Olivia breathed a sigh of relief. "Would you give Badger some hay, please?" she asked as she mounted her bike. I've got to go home. There's something I have to do. You go ahead," said Catherine, understanding. "I heard the awful news about Velvet. No wonder you're taking it hard. Come back when you feel better." If you only knew, thought Olivia, while she biked toward home. Tears of grief and guilt dripped down on the handlebars, making it difficult to see the road. Twice she had to turn sharply to avoid going into a ditch. If Catherine knew what I've done, she wouldn't have said what she did. I'll never feel better. Never. The house was empty when Olivia got home. She ran up to her room and threw herself on the bed. After crying until she didn't have any tears left, she fell asleep and slept soundly and dreamlessly for several hours. But the sleep didn't help. She felt just as bad after she woke up again. Her parents came home from work. Olivia couldn't handle talking to anybody. She excused herself with a bad headache, and then she was left alone, at least by her parents. But not by her own thoughts. Those heavy, guilt-ridden thoughts. It was getting dark outside, and the wind was picking up. Olivia vaguely remembered that the weather forecast had warned of rain and stormy weather for the evening. The weather went perfectly with her spirits. Except that, unlike Olivia's problems, the weather would blow over. How could she ever look Emily in the eye again after this? Or her grandmother, for that matter. "If I had only known that the wishing well could create such misery," mumbled Olivia, taking the stone out from the door. But she had known. She should have understood it already after her first wish. And the old woman had warned her. She had said it would get worse with every wish. Even so, Olivia had not stopped and thought it through. Well, actually, she had tried to think it through, but it hadn't been enough to stop her from wishing. And now it was too late. Too late to fix it again. She had used up all her wishes. Or had she? What if there was one tiny little wish left in the stone? Olivia squeezed the stone in her hand. "I wish for Velvet to be healthy and alive again," she said quietly into the room. But the stone felt cold and dead in her hand. No vibration, no warmth, nothing to indicate that it was anything but a normal gray stone. Of course Olivia knew that, but she felt disappointed anyway. Then there was nothing more to do. Her life was ruined. Or, wait a minute. Olivia was about to throw the stone out of the window when she suddenly stopped herself. Something the woman in black had said suddenly came back to her. "Only the well can change." Did that mean that if she went back to the well, she could change what she'd wished for? Olivia jumped up. She had nothing to lose by trying. Maybe there was still hope. But the woman had also said the time was short. What if it was already too late? What if the well was gone? With her hands shaking, Olivia put her clothes on. She sneaked down the stairs and out the front door. Her parents would never have let her go outside in this weather so late at night, especially after she had said she didn't feel very well. Olivia held her breath as she pulled on her riding boots and put on her warmest coat. Then she opened the door as quietly as she could and slipped outside into the dark, stormy night. Chapter 7. A Race Against Time. "I'll never make it! What was I thinking?" Olivia almost started crying, leaning so far forward on Badger's back that she was halfway lying in the saddle. The wind pushed and pulled at her, and the rain lashed at her face, making it difficult to see. Olivia felt as if she'd been riding for hours in between the tall old trees, swaying so dangerously in the wind. They made creaking, wailing noises that sounded like souls in the utmost torment. Olivia shivered, and her teeth chattered, more from fear than cold. The thought of seeing the woman in black again was also so scary that she almost decided to turn back several times. But every time she changed her mind. Whatever was going to happen, let it happen. She owed it to Emily and Grandma to at least try. Ah! Olivia gasped with fright as something large and undefinable whizzed past her head. The next moment she realized it wasn't a monster, but a large bird, most likely an owl hunting for prey. If Badger had been even a little bit jumpy, Olivia would probably have been lying in a heap on the ground right now, while he fled in complete panic. But he didn't move so much as an ear, just kept going forward, steadily and safely. Olivia leaned down and patted his neck. Her precious Badger, the kindest, most loyal friend on whom she could rely through thick and thin. Lately, she'd barely noticed him at all, as preoccupied as she'd been by the thought of a fantastic new horse. She'd failed Badger, but he hadn't failed her, and he wouldn't let her down. She didn't deserve him. There, finally, she glimpsed the clearing with the old ruins of the foundation wall. But where was the well? Olivia probed into the darkness. Was she too late? Was the well gone? Suddenly there was a gleam of light, and she saw the well. Then it almost disappeared before it became visible again. Olivia realized that her time was almost up. The well was about to disappear, and it would be another 50 years before it would show up again. She gave a gasp of despair as she slid down from Badger's back. She wanted to run the last few steps over to the well, but her legs wouldn't carry her, so she crawled on all fours. When she reached the well, it flicked and turned dim again. "No," sobbed Olivia, stretching out her arm. You can't disappear now, please." As if the well had heard her, it became visible again. Olivia fumbled for the wishing stone in her pocket. For a moment she thought she'd lost it, and her heart almost stopped beating. Then she felt it and pulled it out of her pocket. "Make sure you do the right thing now," said a voice right next to her. Olivia screamed and almost dropped the stone. When she turned her head, she saw the woman in black only a few feet away from her. "I made the wrong choice," said the woman, "and I lost my brothers for good." Her voice was weaker now. Olivia could barely hear it through the powerful gales of wind that howled through the forest. "But what do I do? How do I wish? I have only this one chance, and there are several things I have to undo." "You have to figure it out by yourself." At this point, the woman's voice was merely a weak whisper that came and went with the wind. "But hurry, hurry, time is running out." Suddenly the woman was gone, and Olivia was alone by the well. She held the stone over the water's surface and closed her eyes. The other hand rested on the stone wall surrounding the well. Olivia felt the wall vibrate and shake, and she knew that if she didn't make her wish now, it would be too late. The well was about to disappear for good. I wish. Wish what? For a horrible instant, her head felt completely empty, and then the answer came to her. She dropped the stone into the well and said the words. The moment the stone hit the water, a loud boom erupted from below, and Olivia was thrown back from the well. She fell to the ground with a thump and heard a piercing neigh from Badger. Then the world started spinning around and around, and everything went dark around her. The tall, moss-covered trees were still under the pale spring sun. Every so often a faint breath of wind made the treetops rustle slightly, but otherwise there wasn't a sound anywhere. Suddenly the silence was broken by the sound of horse hooves and happy girls' voices. What a perfect way to start spring break. It's so beautiful here. Olivia held Badger back while she looked up to the high treetops. This part of the woods must be really old, don't you think? Catherine turned toward Olivia and smiled. Some of these trees are over 100 years old, probably more. A long time ago there was a farm right over there. She pointed. My great-great-grandmother grew up here. It's even said there's an old wishing well here. Maybe we should take a break here and see if we can find the well. Of course, chances of that are pretty slim. It's only supposed to appear every 50 years. How exciting, said Emily, holding back Velvet Dancer. I don't know, said Olivia slowly, stroking Badger. It's kind of dark and gloomy in there, between those ruins. Would it be okay if we rode a little farther and took a break at the creek instead? Sure, said Catherine, shrugging her shoulders. Olivia scratched Badger's mane and gave him a loving look. Strange, actually. As recently as this morning when they were getting ready for this ride, she'd felt so envious of Emily for her beautiful horse that it almost hurt. Now the feeling of envy was completely gone. True, Badger was a little short, but Olivia probably wouldn't get much taller than she was now, so Badger would be plenty big enough for them to have many more good years together. You're the best pony in the world, just so you know, said Olivia happily. Badger flapped his ears and looked as if he were not going to argue with her. As the girls rode past the moss-covered foundation ruins, Olivia suddenly had a strange, dizzy feeling, as if she'd been there before. That's funny, she thought. I'm pretty sure I've never come to this part of the woods. The next moment, the feeling was gone, and she continued riding without giving another thought to the place or the wishing well. What did she need a wishing well for? She had Badger, the most wonderful and loyal horse anyone could have. Right at this moment, Olivia felt she must be the luckiest girl in the world.